Hello, in this video I'm going to be talking about tarot and astrology correspondences. So which cards represent which things astrologically, as well as how to combine tarot and astrology in practice. The tarot deck has 78 cards. The major arcana has 22 cards. The minor arcana has 56. And then you can also break down the minor arcana even further into 40 pip cards, or the aces through tens and four suits, as well as the 16 court cards, pages, knights, queens, and kings in four suits. The suits represent the four elements. So the wands represent fire, swords represent air, pentacles represent earth, and cups represent water. In general, people agree about a lot of the tarot and astrology correspondences, but there are also definitely aspects that people disagree on. And I can usually see validity to multiple points of view when it comes to those disagreements. I'm not going to really get into that in this video. I'm just going to focus on what works for me, what I have sort of come up with over the years, and I have changed my mind over the years about some of these things. And I'm just going to stick with it because it really works for me and it really resonates with me. And I think what matters the most is that everybody just does what resonates with them and then sticks with it. And then it gets really ingrained and it's more powerful in your readings. Okay, so to start with, the major arcana has 22 cards. 12 of those cards represent the 12 zodiac signs, and then the other 10 represent the 10 planets and luminaries. So to start with, we'll go over the cards that represent the 12 zodiac signs. For Aries, there's the Emperor. For Taurus, the Hierophant. For Gemini, the Lovers. For Cancer, the Chariot. For Leo, Strength. For Virgo, the Hermit. For Libra, Justice. For Scorpio, Death. For Sagittarius, Temperance. For Capricorn, the Devil. For Aquarius, the Star. And for Pisces, the Moon. Okay, so that leaves 10 other major arcana cards, and those represent the planets and the luminaries. Luminary means the sun and the moon. So we'll just go in order through the major arcana with the cards that are missing. Unlike the zodiac signs, which go in order in the major arcana, the planets and the luminaries are more based on what fits, and there isn't really an order to it. So for Uranus, we have the Fool. For Mercury, the Magician. For the Moon, the High Priestess. For Venus, the Empress. For Jupiter, the Wheel of Fortune. For Neptune, the Hanged Man. For Mars, the Tower. For the Sun, the Sun. For Pluto, Judgment. And for Saturn, the World. Just a few thoughts that I have about these planetary correspondences in the tarot. First of all, if anyone has any idea which card would represent Chiron, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I have some of my own, but I want to hear what everyone else thinks. So the Fool being Uranus, I just love that he's at the edge of the cliff. Like, are you ready to jump? And that is so Uranian. And then the Magician being Mercury, I think that really speaks to our thoughts creating our reality, our perception of things changing reality, and our ability to create. The High Priestess as the moon. Yes, it's funny that the moon card doesn't represent the moon like the sun represents the sun, but the High Priestess speaks to the mysteries and the intuition and all of those like hidden sacred things that we associate with the moon. Um, and also like the feminine aspect as well, the divine feminine aspect. The Empress being Venus, I love this for that sense of abundance and that nurtured feeling that you find with both Venus and the Empress. The Wheel of Fortune. Jupiter is this planet of opportunities and growth and opportunities for growth, and I think you can really see that with the Wheel of Fortune. The Hanged Man as Neptune, breaking through assumptions and seeing things from a new perspective, and how you have to surrender, and there can be like this sense of sacrifice for a greater purpose. And all of those things are very Neptunian. And even just, like, looking at it and being like, "Why is he doing that?" Like, even that just, like, initial reaction is very Neptunian, I think. The Tower being Mars, I mean, there's very something very in your face about this card, which very Martian. And sometimes that's what you need. You need, like, a kick in the butt, and I think that can be seen with this card and with Mars. The Sun being the Sun, I mean, pretty self-explanatory. There's all that joy and optimism and the things that make us feel bright and shiny, and, yeah, that makes sense. And then Judgment being Pluto. I think that Pluto as a planet can be a little intimidating, and I think that this card can also be a little intimidating, and it can sort of make you step out of your comfort zone, and it can make you it's like Pluto makes you accept change, and it's sort of like if you don't choose transformation, then Pluto will sort of force you to do it. Um, it can anyway. And I think that with the Judgment card, it's like you're being called to something, and it might not be easy, and maybe you wish you weren't called to it, or maybe um, you wish you could just like stay ignorant of whatever truth has come to you through this moment or this card or whatever. And I think that they just both have that like I don't know, you kinda have to, like, gear up to accept it sort of energy. The World as Saturn. I think, first of all, just Saturn as the wisdom, the experience card. I mean, also the hard work, but, like, with the World, it's like you've done the work, you've completed it, you've put in your time, and now you're at the end of the journey, and I think that really highlights a more positive, aspect of Saturn. Sometimes people focus on the negative with that planet. All right, so I just wanted to throw a little extra out there. I think that the signs are pretty well known, the associations with the zodiac signs and the major arcana cards. The planets, I don't hear people talk about as much, so I just wanted to elaborate a little bit. All right, so the four elements in the tarot. All right, so there are four suits, and they each represent one of the elements, as I mentioned earlier. But anyway, wands equals fire, cups water, pentacles earth, and swords air. In astrology, there are three zodiac signs associated with each element. So Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius are associated with the fire element. Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn are associated with the earth element. Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius are associated with air, and Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces are associated with water. Each element also has one sign of each modality: cardinal, fixed, or mutable. Cardinal signs are associated with the beginning of the seasons, and they have that quality of initiative inherent to them. The cardinal signs are Aries, cardinal fire, which would be the beginning of spring in the northern hemisphere. Cancer, cardinal water, the beginning of summer. Libra, cardinal air, the beginning of fall. And Capricorn, cardinal earth, the beginning of winter. Those are all for the northern hemisphere. Fixed signs are associated with the middle of seasons when things are more consistent and unchanging. The fixed signs are Taurus, fixed earth, mid spring in the northern hemisphere, Leo, fixed fire, midsummer, Scorpio, fixed water, mid fall, and Aquarius, fixed air, midwinter. The mutable signs are associated with the ends of the seasons when change is like the big thing. Everything's changing. That's a defining feature. So the mutable signs are Gemini, mutable air, which is associated with the end of spring in the northern hemisphere, Virgo, mutable earth, end of summer, Sagittarius, mutable fire, end of fall, and Pisces, mutable water, end of winter. All right, so to start with, we'll talk about the aces. The aces represent the pure energy of each element. So, for example, the Ace of Wands would represent fire. It would represent the signs of Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, also the fire element in general. If you know the person's birth chart, it could be indicating that this is an element they need to learn how to work with. This is something they need more of in their life, something that they need to find a way to manifest more in their life. It could also be representing some kind of major transit that's coming up in the fire element. Um, it depends on the context, obviously, but um, you can also use the aces to represent the seasons. So with timing questions, you can get really specific or you can keep it vague. Generally, I go to astrology first for timing questions, but you can't always do that. You don't always know the birth data, first of all. Um, Also, sometimes you just don't have the time or you just want to do a really quick tarot reading and you're in that context and that's what you want to do. So it's good to be able to do it. Um, so the aces can represent the seasons. The pentacles representing spring, wands representing summer, cups representing fall, and swords representing winter. If you want a more specific timing answer, you can also use the pip cards, which we will get into later on. But this is a simple, easy way to do it with just 4 cards. Okay, so then there's the 40 pip cards. These are actually really easy to figure out once you get the system straight. So in each element, in each suit, which represents an element, the cards are broken down to the cards 2, 3, and 4 representing the cardinal sign of that element, cards 5, 6, and 7 representing the fixed sign in that element, and cards 8, 9, and 10 representing the mutable sign in that element. So, for example, if you were talking about Aries, then you would know it's a cardinal fire sign. So, fire would be wands, cardinal would be 2, 3, and 4. So, why are there 3 cards? That's because each sign can be broken down into 3 decans. So that would be the 0 to 9 degrees, 10 to 19 degrees, and 20 to 29 degrees of that sign. So if you were talking about the first 10 degrees of Aries, then you would have the 2 of Wands. If you were talking about the second 10 degrees of Aries, you would have the 3 of Wands. And if you were talking about the last decan of Aries, you would have the 4 of Wands. For another example, if you were talking about Taurus, that's a fixed sign and it's also an earth sign. So for earth, you would look to Pentacles. For fixed, it would be just like it's the middle of the season, it's also the middle of the suit. So cards 5, 6, and 7. And so that would mean that the first decan of Taurus would be the 5 of Pentacles. The second decan of Taurus would be the 6 of Pentacles. And the last decan of Taurus would be the 7 of Pentacles. So this is actually helpful for more precise timing questions because you can ask your questions with the context of you want to know which part of a particular zodiac season during the year. So like the sun being in Aries, but like when in Aries, and then you get the 2 of wands, and then you know it's right in the beginning of Aries. So, you know, end of March or something. And so that can get really specific. I don't usually do that. I really, really do turn to astrology for timing, but it's pretty cool. And you can also use it for if you wanted to do like a visual birth chart and you wanted to lay out your different placements and just like look at them and meditate on that and thinking like, well, my sun is in the second decan of Taurus or my moon is in the third decan of Gemini. And then you just like lay it out and you just think about what that means to you, what those cards mean to you. Also using them as tools for reflection throughout the year as you move through the decans and then like reflecting on each card as you pass through it. And that's really powerful too. All right, so that just leaves the court cards. There are 16 court cards, 4 for each suit. The pages of each suit represent, sort of like the aces, represent that element's energy in general. So if we were looking at the cups, the page of cups would represent the water element. Sometimes it can represent young people. Sometimes it can represent something childlike about yourself. It can represent all sorts of things. I mean, I don't really want to get into just like basic tarot meanings in this video necessarily, but anything that could be associated with the water element could be associated with this card. Then after that, we use the modalities again so that the knights represent the fixed sign in each element, the queen represents the cardinal sign in each element, and the king represents the mutable sign in each element. I used to use a different set of associations, and I think plenty of people are probably going to be like, wait, no, the knights are supposed to be mutable, the kings are supposed to be fixed. This just works better for me. I know that I believe this was in the Golden Dawn system this way, and maybe there's some confusion because what was really the king they called the knight and so on. Um, but overall, I feel like that fixed energy just works for the knights because they're a little younger, they're a little more stubborn. I think they're a little more set in their ways, and then the mutability equating to the king's wisdom and experience, and like um, also that ability to see when change is necessary. I think that really works for the kings. So that's what I use. I mean, you can use whatever you want, just find a system and stick with it, as I said before. Interestingly, I haven't really come across anyone who said anything for the queens other than cardinal signs, so that seems pretty consistent. But we have, if I were to look through the cups, then the Knight of Cups would be Scorpio, fixed water. The Queen of Cups would be Cancer, cardinal water. And the King of Cups, or mutable water, would be Pisces. So I love to use the court cards. You could use them to be a significator in a spread, which would be like setting aside a card to represent a person that the reading is for or about. Um, I don't do that a lot, but I do love to pay attention to how people will show up in a reading unexpected through the court cards, and also roles that we are trying to play or don't want to play or would like to play can also show up through the court cards. Um, the sort of person that we want to be, or the sort of person that we are struggling not to be, or something like that can also show up through a court card. So that's very really useful if you, especially if you know the person, any of their astrology, or the astrology of anyone else in their life that might be coming up. It's really powerful to be able to look at the court cards and be like, hey, could this be this person? All right, so how do you combine tarot and astrology in a reading? First of all, if the person is primarily there for astrology, sometimes it can be a helpful icebreaker to just throw down a tarot spread, even if it's just a few cards, but really like even like a whole Celtic cross spread, and just be like, let's just see what comes up. And then sometimes that can get the person talking, and that can really show you, like sometimes people come for an astrology reading, but they don't really know what they want to focus on, and they don't really have any issues that they're willing to talk about right off the bat. And there's so much you can say from looking at a chart that it's really helpful to be able to narrow it down and be like, okay, so like what's going on? And tarot, I think, can be a really great way to get people to talk about what's going on. Also, it can be helpful to, there are even like ways that you can use tarot cards to enhance the astrological reading. Like you could use a 12 houses spread, where if you know what a natal wheel looks like, then you would just lay a card down for each house representing that area of the person's life. And then you can see like how that resonates with the person. And then you can combine that with looking at their actual birth chart and their transits and see like what's going on there, and it creates also this like back and forth between the two. It just like adds that extra layer. Um, it can be helpful in a tarot reading to know the client's big three, their sun, moon, and rising sign, or at least their sun sign. I think most people know that. Um, it can be a way to see like when a card is really trying to be about that person, or if there's someone else, if it's like a relationship reading or something, and like you happen to know the zodiac sign of the other person too, that can be a helpful way to see how they're coming up in the reading. It can also be helpful if you're doing a spread that like lays out cards for one person and then another person to lay a significator, like a court card or something that represents their sun sign, or if they really resonate with their rising sign or something, the card that represents that at the top of each, um, just like for that like visual effect. And then it can also be like, yes, you can use it for timing questions. I talked about that a bunch. You can use the pip cards for like really specific timing questions. You could use just going with the elements, like if I draw this card, then that means it's going to happen in this season or something. Um, you can also, some people will use different court cards for different lengths of time, but that's not really astrological, so I'm not going to get into that. But there's definitely more to it if you want to get into timing and tarot than just this element equals this season. But that is one astrological component of it. So I thought I would bring that up in this video. Um, and you can also use, like, if you do an astrological reading and there are things that come up and you want to work on them and you want to try to find a way to like manifest an upcoming transit in a positive way. And I I think that one helpful way to do that is to think about like, this is the archetype that I want to focus on channeling, and this is the energy that I want to focus on channeling, or this is the planet I need to work with. And then just like keeping that card that represents that thing out where you'll see it and like really thinking about it, or like sleeping with it under your pillow, or like meditating on it, or whatever you do, writing about it in your journal, just like really focusing on that energy so that you can learn how to create more of that energy in your life, or so that you can be less afraid of like an upcoming Pluto transit or something. You just like really work with that judgment card, and you try to sort of make it your own, and like take back some of the power if you're feeling nervous, or use it to brainstorm ways that you can guide the transit in a meaningful and positive way for yourself. So that is a basic overview of tarot and astrology correspondences, and some of the ways that I use a combination of both. I mean, I'll definitely also just like do an astrology reading and be like, hey, let's pull a few tarot cards at the end just because I feel like it. Or we'll be doing a tarot reading and I'll think like, oh man, it seems like you really got this going on. Like, I wonder if you have this transit coming up, or if this is going on in your chart. And if the person knows their birth data, like if it's someone I've worked with before with astrology, then it's really helpful to just like be like, hold on a second, and like pull out, their chart and see what's going on. So there's a lot of ways that they can really benefit each other and just add extra layers for readings. So I hope you like this video, and thank you so much for watching.